So people that are preparing and wanting to like really take it seriously, like, hey, I want to try to have a significant change, because I always think about people like the moon math's fun because it gets people excited. And I was learning about, like, oh, how do I make a cool intro, like a cool stinger for my videos. And I was watching a guy that does a lot of videos and advice on YouTube. He was actually Logan Paul's editor, and he's from England. And he's like, no stinger, no intro. The reason is you've got to get into it immediately. You have 5 seconds.
Hmm.
And I was like, man, obviously I'm not going to disagree with him. I thought I needed to spend all this time making a cool intro, and I have one, but it it absolutely is true. Like, I look at the retention on my videos, and yeah, it's, if they stick for a while, but most of them are gone in the first 20 seconds. So how does that apply to interviews? How does that apply to crypto? How do we, well, the moon math is one thing that works. And so if you can do what you've done on your channel, and do it in a responsible, good way, that's perfect. It gets people to stick and ultimately educate themselves. And the interesting thing is, right now, when it's bloody and a terrible bear market, is when people need to be trying to figure out, how do I get a little bit in, $100 a paycheck or whatever I can do? How do I get that in, and daily cost average, or just try to get into things that I think, and just the research of figuring out what you're going to put it into is really, really difficult. And is why it's nice when you find somebody like a Richard Hart who does Hex, and you have so much success with that, and then they come out with something else. It's kind of, it's a little easier, because odds are, if one thing was successful, it may not be as successful, but you're going to stick with the one that brought you, as they say, and hopefully the next project of his will be successful. But if you're talking to somebody brand new that's getting into crypto, what are a couple pieces of advice? Like, what are the first things that they need to do to really have long-term success? Like you said, 8 years. That's where your mind needs to be. It's going to take 8 years, but it's going to work if I do what couple things first.
I would say study holding your coins to yourself, holding your tokens to yourself. Like learn
That's
how to use a
interesting.
ledger wallet or a treasure wallet. That's number one, because you don't want to leave your stuff on these exchanges, because like three of them went down in the past year. And these are the big ones too. FTX, Gemini. Gemini didn't really go down, but it had major problems. If
You
you did
couldn't
a,
get your funds
you couldn't,
off.
yeah, you couldn't take your funds out at all if you did one of their interest accounts.
Right.
So that's and I was like, wow, this is a multi-billion-dollar company that still
Right.
couldn't get your money back. So not to talk about the smaller exchanges. So learn how to do self custody, and then look for the small coins that have good fundamentals. Like do research on them, read the white paper. If you don't feel like reading the white paper, at least watch like tons of YouTube videos on it before you start throwing your money at it. And then be
Watch the people that are willing to read the white paper, or
exactly.
even read it online. That's one of the things I like about your channel. I'll even give Jim Crypto some credit. He does a good job about learning live.
Yeah,
And I think there's a lot of value in that, because people don't want to be alone. And even if you're learning,
mhm,
they're typically willing to watch if they like your channel. But
definitely.
sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, no, you're fine. Like you definitely need to learn about the crypto itself, and then follow cryptos that have a big community in them, because communities sometimes the tokenomics are necessary and the security is necessary. But look at Solana. Solana has been hacked like 4 or 5 times now, but the
Right.
community is so big that no one cares. Solana is still like a top 10 coin, top 20 coin,
Yeah.
and it's been
Yeah. At
yeah,
least, right? I mean,
it's- yeah.
it's interesting that that they can survive that, and that the community doesn't care. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like I would really care, like the little things, like Hex is
Mhm.
just a front end, that website, but being able to say it's never been down in 3 years and 2 months, like, that's a pretty big deal, and it feels like it's a big deal because all the other coins have been down in that same period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like going back to Zen, that is what's exciting, because the speed of which they're developing and moving, and they seem to not be having any hiccups. Like I know they had one little issue on another chain, but I'm only doing Zen on ETH.